Hello, everybody. How are you all doing today?
Oh, I can't complain.
So, this fine gentleman here is Bill from the Dungeon Delver, who will be telling us a bit about his history in gaming. And I do believe it's a long history, isn't it?
I've been gaming for a minute or two, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about your gaming collection behind you before the stream, so we'll probably come back to that in a few minutes. In the meantime, hi Charlene, hi Mia, hi Dungeon Matron and Kane Q1, good to see you. Hi Questboard Terrain and Doom Swords Dungeons. Couple of new people in there. Hope you're doing great. Hey, Dungeon Minister, good to see you.
Hey, Dungeon Minister, how you doing today, Padre?
And Jorge Uribe, nice to see you as well. Yeah, I originally found your channel through the Dungeon Minister. I think I had done a couple of collaboration videos with him, and then I just wandered onto one of your streams and was like, oh, this man knows what he's talking about.
A little bit.
So, Bill, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Bill Sylvie. I have been a tabletop RPG gamer since 1981. I started playing D&D when we first moved to Florida. I didn't know anyone, and some of the kids in elementary school were passing around a book that looked really interesting to me. And I remember it specifically, it was actually a copy of the module A3 Slavers, Secret of the Slaver's Stockade, part of the great A series of module, the Slave Lords modules. And I asked if I could look at it, and I flipped through it, and I was fascinated. It looked like a comic book, but it talked about rules. It was full of lines that were just strings of numbers. And the way it described this baby blue map on the inside of the cover, which for some reason just came off, it talked about things in first person present tense. And it didn't say, you know, John draws his sword and Mary prepares a spell. It said, if the players, if the characters, and I was immediately sucked in and I wanted more of it. And rather inexpertly, the other kids kind of explained what Dungeons and Dragons was. And all I knew was I wanted more. I wanted into it. And armed with the tiny bit of information I had, I went to well, first I harangued my parents about it probably for a good few weeks, and then we went to a just a little local toy shop, and they had a whole wall of Dungeons and Dragons products, and I had no idea what I needed. But what I did end up buying was a copy of Keep on the Borderlands and a set of dice, the little blister of TSR dice that came with I think my crayon was red. Uh, and so I got the dice and I got the module and I came home and I opened it and I started reading it, and I realized as I carefully read through it, um, when they were referencing pages in the rules, that I didn't have a rule book.
Oops.
I didn't know what they were talking about. As luck would have it, though, I got the single D&D module that actually has pullout charts in it that have a bare bones skeletal framework of the rules. And so I kind of started to intuit, because the tables would say, man fighting monster, and then in parentheses underneath it, roll a d20.
Okay.
Then saving throws for characters level 1 to 3, roll a d20. And so I started to put this together, and then there's a page in the back, a worksheet for creating non-player characters with strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma. And I said, okay, and the numbers go from 3 to 18. Now, I didn't grasp that that meant 3 six-sided dice. For making characters, we rolled a d20 and ignored anything that 1 or a 2 or anything less than 3 and greater than 18. So our character creation curve was pretty flat. But that's how I played D&D for the first year, just using Keep on the Borderlands and that set of dice until I realized, oh, right, I need rules. So I did the smart thing and once again hectored my parents, and the first D&D rule book I bought was the AD&D Monster Manual.
Okay.
So I still didn't have a complete set of rules, but between that and the next major purchase I made, I did get a copy of the basic and expert rules and start to figure things out, and took friends and so on to the Isle of Dread. And it's just kind of been a love affair with some on and off phases ever since then. And I dig it. It was my first and best, and I absolutely love every note of classic Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, it strikes me that it's so different from people today, where they like endless debates of, but how does this rule work, and how is this supposed to do, and whatever. And I remember I started in the late-ish 90s, and I think the vibe was closer to what you're describing, because we're like, yeah, let's just make up a rule.
Yeah, I just anything that wasn't that wasn't explained, I just kind of made stuff up. I just sort of dove in and said, okay, well, I don't have a rule book for that, and mom and dad aren't gonna shell out more of their hard-earned money on this nonsense for a while, so I'll just make stuff up, and we just went with the simplest, most innocent approach as kids, but it worked. It worked, and we had fun. So who's to say we were doing it wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not a question of wrong. It's like as long as you're having fun, you're doing it right.
Yeah,
And seeing
yeah.
as you're still here so many years later, then I guess it really was fun.
It was. And like I said, there were ups and downs. I played through uh elementary school, well, the last year of elementary school, and then um the middle school grades. That's you go in at 11 years, and then at like 14 years you start your high school here in the States. But then a little bit into high school, along came the Commodore 64. And I did play lots of fantasy role-playing games on it, but it was a lot easier. And unfortunately, my parents were caught up in the nonsense with the the moral panic that was going on about D&D. They were okay with me casting spells and killing monsters and fighting demons on the computer more than gathering around the dining room table and doing it with friends. And when I got back into RPGs, at pen and paper RPGs, just after high school, with a group of friends, some of whom I'm still friends with to this day, they had gotten D&D out of their system in high school and in college. They're a few years older than me. So when I started gaming with them, they wanted to play anything but D&D. So hero system, the champions, as it was called back then, Mech Warrior. Even when they did want a fantasy game, they wanted to do anything but D&D. So we played MERP, we played Rollmaster, we played Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, lots of board war games, so many board war games, Warhammer 40K, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and on and on. And it kind of went like that from like 1989 up till about 97. And I just kind of started to get that itch, and I was looking through some boxes, and my wife and I had moved into a new place, and I started looking through boxes, and I found the one book that I had left from my childhood D&D days, because my monster manual, my modules, my deities and demigods, all that stuff had gone literally for beer money.
Okay.
Those books were gone, but I still had a copy of Keep on the Borderlands. And I started leafing through it, and someone we had gone to a friend's house and played a one-off game of AD&D that we thought was going to become a campaign. And I said, hey, I don't have a player's handbook. So he lent me his, and I had that and Keep on the Borderlands, and I just sat there. I didn't get any more unpacking out of the boxes done. I just sat there on the floor of that spare bedroom looking through those, and I was like, man, I want to do this again. So it started the love affair again in 97, and here I am, and I'll never let go. So
So let's see. Kane Q1 is saying, Carl, I can't quite place your accent. I'm Maltese, which probably gives you not very much information, but there you go. So back to Bill. How do you go from there to writing modules and you've been working on stuff and things?
well, that the two are kind of closely tied together, because now I had been on the internet since 1989, since before I started gaming again. A lot of people think the internet just like January 1st, 1995, there was the World Wide Web. But I mean, the internet, as we understand it, the internet came into existence in the late 1980s. There were what was called ARPANET existed from the late 1970s, but by 89, I was working for a local internet service provider. You dialed in with your modem, and
I remember those days. Yeah.
there was no web. It was email, FTP, which you download and upload files with, and Usenet, which is like a message board discussion forum with vasty topics. But so fast forward to 97, and I'm sitting there, and I had started to 99, I should say 99. So it's a couple of years later. And I had started to recollect AD&D books and modules and so on and et cetera. And out there on the web, the World Wide Web, I said, I wonder if Gary Gygax has an email address. So
Okay.
I looked on Alta Vista, because remember, kids, Google was being run out of Sergey Brin's spare bedroom at this point. So I go on Alta Vista and I say, Gary Gygax email address, and ggygax@genevaonline.com. Great. So I sent an email and I said, hi, is this Gary Gygax? And later that night, I get an email back. Yes, this is me. And I shared the email around. Like, again, this is 1999. I printed the email out. Just fucking printed. And I'm showing it to friends. I'm like, look, Gary Gygax. But as I would communicate with Gary via email occasionally, I started up my own website, the first iteration of the Delver's Dungeon. And I thought, he seems like a nice enough fellow. I'll see if I can interview Gary over the phone. And he agreed, and he let me record it. He said, you can record this. So I recorded the audio of it, which I still have, and then I transcribed it and I would just periodically reach out to Gary, and then one day on, I think it was EN World, or someplace. No, it wasn't EN World. No. It was Dragon's Foot. Dragon's Foot. Gary just kind of sent out an all hands and said, "Hey, I'm looking for people to come and work on the Yigsburg project with me. It's my new campaign world." And I raised my hand and said, "Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to participate. Here's what I've been doing." And at that point, I had written homemade AD&D modules and just offered them as free PDFs on my website. If you dig around on the internet, you can find them. I don't really have a place to host them anymore, but I made them look like AD&D modules. I even got a webcomic artist whose name I've completely forgotten now. I'm so sorry, but he did a gorgeous cover for the very last module I did, and I forwarded all these to Gary, and he said, "Yeah, you definitely seem to know what you're doing." So I came on board the team, and I just started working through, and as I worked on it, I mean, hey, I was never shy about self-promotion. So I had a couple of people over the years that I reached out to. Matt Finch is Mythmere Games is one of them. Matt very graciously bought a small adventure for me that got published in Knoxbell magazine. And I did a couple of column pieces for some independent zines that I really and truly enjoyed doing. And just over time, as things rolled on, it's kind of like a snowball going downhill. I would do pieces here and there, sometimes gratis, sometimes for pay. And I guess the first major thing that got published, Lance Hovermail, who is an exceptionally talented writer of fiction and, of course, of D&D modules. Lance reached out to me and he said, "I want you to write a D&D module with me." Now, understand, this is before the OSR. This is before Osric. This is before Swords and Wizardry. There was no, "I'm going to publish AD&D or OD&D for pay," you understand. And I was like, "Lance, man, I don't want to write third edition stuff." And he's like, "Don't write third edition stuff. Write AD&D. I'll worry about the mechanics. We have people here at Necromancer who worry about the mechanics. Write a Bill Sylvie, merciless, high-level adventure." I said, "I've got the latitude I want." He said, "You've got the latitude you want." So I worked with Lance on Elemental Moon through Necromancer Games, and I've got it. Do it. I have my copy. I finally got a physical copy like this year. I went out and bought a physical copy from Noble Knight Games. I didn't actually own one. I made the princely sum of $50 for that one also, for all of Elemental Moon, the thousands of words I wrote for Elemental Moon, which is not, I mean, that's not on Lance, but so I wrote it and I said, "Look, man, if I'm writing third edition stuff, can I write under a pen name?" And he said, "Absolutely." So I chose a silly pen name, and Elemental Moon was a lot of fun to write. I'm working on a sequel to it right now for Necromancer. They came back to me and said, "Hey, you want to do a sequel to Elemental Moon?" I was like, "Absolutely." And I reached out to Lance, and he's been a great source of support, but he's got his life is on a different arc at the moment. So, I'm sort of flying solo on this one, but after Elemental Moon, things seem to pick up. I did actually one of the modules that I wrote and gave away for free way back in like 2003 got optioned and picked up by Hellebarde Games. They're hellebardgames.com. And my buddy Don picked up that MS from me. And then, of course, they had to rework it for Castles and Crusades and for Osric, because the original is set in Greyhawk. It is an AD&D
Okay.
module. Because I give it away for free, I fly under the radar at Wizards over, Wizards of the Coast. So they reworked it. They did a beautiful job. And if you want an actual copy of it, you can buy that from Hellebarde. And around that same time, now this is an unfortunate story, but one of the things that I had written for Gary was he came to me and asked me specifically, I was so thrilled by this, to work on him with the Teeth of the Barkesh Nor, which if you played AD&D and the magic item, the Teeth of the Dalvernar, they're actual teeth that you can stick in a gap in your own mouth, and they give you magic powers. Well, back in 1975, 76, when he wrote this adventure, the Teeth of the Barkesh Nor, that was what they were called. And so he wrote all these notes about questing for and finding the teeth in this pocket dimension that you could only access through Castle Greyhawk. You had to go all the way to the bottom of Castle Greyhawk and open a door and go through, and then you were in this weird, surreal kind of, think like a Roger Dean painting from a Yes album cover. And you've got all these different lands to journey through in a limited amount of time to find the Teeth of the Barkesh Nor. And I wrote that module. I submitted it, and there's a great big story about why it didn't get published, but I'll spare you. Suffice to say that the interference of two people stopped it from being published.
Oh.
And one of those persons is Gail Gygax, who pulled all of the contracts from Trollord Games. So very, very little of what we wrote for Gary ever got published. Nothing that I wrote. And I sat on the manuscript very sore about what happened. I sat on it for the longest time. And finally, back in 2018, 2019, I realized that there's a portion of it, there's a section of it, there's a dungeon crawl in Teeth of the Barkesh Nor that is completely written by me. It's not based on any of Gary's notes. I put it in there, and I asked Gary, can I put this here? There's a blank space here. Can I put this in here? And he said, absolutely. I told him what I wanted to do. It was an Egyptian-themed area, and he was very enthusiastic about it. So I wrote that, put it in there. Well, I was doing some thinking, and I said, you know what? That's mine. That's not Gary's. That doesn't have Gary's notes in it. So I reached out to Matt, who at that time was working for Frog God Games, and I said, hey, what if I did this? I mean, you know the law, your company knows the law. We wouldn't be stepping on Gail Gygax's toes. And we sort of backed and forth, and they said, okay, can you do a little bit of cleanup and, sort of make it its own thing? And then write an essay for us about where this comes from. A little bit of history, I think, will be a hook. So I did that and sent them the manuscript, and it's published by Frog God Games. It's called The Lost Crypt. And you can get a little piece of Teeth of the Barkesh Nor from them. And I've got, to date, that's it. A bunch of free stuff, a bunch of articles, and a few modules is what I've got out there now.
Yeah, but compared to it's a fraction of the whole stuff, the whole thing you've written, yeah?
Yeah. Unfortunately, all of us who worked on the Yigsburg project, and there were many of us, we started as a group of 30, and then eventually, as folks had other responsibilities, unforeseen issues pop up over the years, we sort of whittled down to 11. But regardless, all of us hope that someday, somehow, some way, we'll be able to publish our works. I don't know if that'll ever happen. But yeah, I mean, it was a good many hundred thousands of words of work that I did for Gary over the course of not too many years, about 3 years, and before he passed away. So my hope is that someday it'll see the light of day because, as you accurately point out, there's not there's not much of it out there that I actually wrote for him. But I continue on. I continue to work on things. I'm doing some stuff with Yang Yan Zhao. I've got something that just came up that just landed on my plate. I don't have the manuscript yet, but Heidi Gygax and her husband Eric Garland have their own publishing concern going, and they recently kickstarted a module that is for 5th edition, but one of their Kickstarter goals was, hey, if we hit this, we're going to release a PDF copy for free to our backers that will be completely reworked for 1st edition AD&D and for original D&D. And they approached me and said, would you do the conversion work if we hit the goal? I said, absolutely. So that is coming to fruition also.
Neat.
So I got a few things on my plate.
That is neat. So in the meantime, I see that Dungeons and Chronics and Dirty Basement Terrain and Earth Membrick have joined us. Hi guys.
Hello.
So before we get to talking about old school rules and stuff, do you have any thoughts on how the whole scene has changed since the since when you started? Because I know that, for example, let's say in the 90s there was that whole edgy, World of Darkness being getting period, and then I think over the last few years I've seen things go a bit more fancy and fairy and whimsical and stuff. What are your thoughts about the movement of the hobby as a whole?
Yeah. So when I started playing back in 81, I mean, yeah, I was 11 years old. And looking back now, like some of my contemporaries who had less, I don't know, less sort of fairy tale introductions. It's like mom and dad heard him talking about the D&D things. We were not well off folks when we moved to Florida, and a bunch of my school chums were from well off families. So they said they wanted Dungeons and Dragons. Mom and dad got them. The core 3, both
Yeah.
sets, a dragon subscription, the works. And getting to go to Gen Con. They were spoiled brats, is what I'm saying. But they were very in the scene. They talked about Gen Con and did you read this in Dragon magazine? And I was just like, whoa, that's a whole other language you're talking there. So I was really kind of above and below that mainstream current for a long time. I mean, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin was some far away land, and Dragon magazine was this rare manuscript that I would never lay hands upon or anything like that. Even though we had incredible game stores here in the Central Florida area, but so I really started to pay attention to the scene, as it were, when I came back into it. But looking back over things through the 90s, I mean, I was talking about this the other night on a stream. The hobby has definitely gone through phases, and I think if you look at the days of D&D, everybody was trying to out D&D, and I'm not just being a flash and showing this off. But I mean, you know, the idea that everything you'd need is in one little box was pretty amazing. And a lot of companies, I think, attempted to repeat that success by releasing small games in boxes. And I've got some of them over here. I've got Dragons of Under-Earth from Metagaming. I've got Car Wars, things like that. Tunnels and Trolls was another one, right? Let's out D&D with simpler and simpler rules. And so I think there was that phase. But as the 80s went on, I mean, the hobby dances to Dungeons and Dragons tune. You can love it, you can hate it, but that's the simple reality. And when companies started trying to out D&D in the 80s and 90s, they went the opposite direction and said, no, D&D is too minimal. We're going to add more. We're going to give more. And so we wound up with Rollmaster, which started out as a homebrew rule set to add on to D&D. The creators of Rollmaster said, no, D&D is fine, but its combat rules aren't realistic enough. So they built onto it, and then they eventually built their own thing. And everybody went to depercentile skill systems and dozens of stats and just everything just kind of, and every game that followed in that sort of expansion out from the singularity that is D&D, if you will, created more and more complex mechanisms until you wound up with stuff like MERP, like Cyberpunk, like
I know GURPS gets a lot of flack for that kind of thing. Yeah?
GURPS, absolutely. GURPS is a good call. Shadowrun, Earth Dawn, just games that were flow charts and tables and matrices and dependent exploding die rolls and on and on. And every system had to be more bloated and offer more options than the system before it. And even D&D got caught up in this with the player's options and powers and whatever towards the end of 2E, to where it also was a bloated mess. But the problem was, rather than clean sheeting, D&D was still building on this.
On the white box, all right?
D&D was an inverted pyramid, and it was balanced precipitously on OD&D, and it showed. There were cracks forming in it. You know, when you had different campaign worlds and different variation books adding more and more stuff on it, and you could get close to a D&D book section in a game store and hear the faint creaking of timbers, you know. So as games evolved, people wanted more, and they looked at games and said, your game isn't good unless it's got all of this stuff. And now I'm not a fan. I'm not going to lie about it. But World of Darkness, storyteller at its core, lore aside, right? Because you can build a house out of World of Darkness books when it comes to lore. But mechanically, they said, hold up. We can tell a story here with a fairly simple system. It still had some of that 90s cruft in it, right? But they stuck to a fairly simple mechanical progression. And they went a completely different direction. They said, look, the 90s were a fairly decadent time. The Cold War ended. We couldn't foresee the horrible wake up we get a decade later. So from 91 to mid 2001 was just a nonstop party, and it was fueled by the goth industrial punk movement. And bless their shellacked black little heads, the folks at the White Wolf rode that wave, and they tapped into a zeitgeist, a very sort of nihilistic yet fanciful zeitgeist. Anne Rice had hit it huge with those vampire romance books, the Vampire Interview, and that. I'm sorry, don't at me. I never read the things, but and World of Darkness just rode that wave. And there was a period, I can't remember if it was 92 or 93, when the top selling RPG, and it was the only year, even as bad as people say 4E was, 4E still outsold everybody
Seriously?
else.
I'm not familiar with that kind of statistics, but that's quite surprising because everyone I've ever heard talking about 40 hates it. I've never met anyone who said 40 was good.
No, oh no, neither have I. But it's still, I mean, Pathfinder matched its sales one year, but in the 90s, one year in the early 90s, White Wolf Vampire the Masquerade outsold D&D. And I mean, that was a tectonic event. That was a Chicxulub meteor slamming into the Earth level event for TSR, to see themselves outpaced by a bunch of anarcho punks from Seattle.
Okay, just one sec. Jorge just wants you to know that the books are Interviewed Vampire, The Vampire Lestat, and The Queen of the Damned. And Doom Swords Dungeon says at. Hi, Sean.
At. I got added by Doomsword.
Oh,
Doomsword's a good
no.
guy. He's a great guy, and I'm glad to know him. A really awesome fellow. He's like a 30-40 minute drive from me, and
Oh, nice.
it's just great to know the guy. He's a swell dude. But by the time sort of the hangover started to end in the mid 2000s, there were two divergent points. There was the look, D&D is just going to continue to evolve, Grandpa, get used to it. And you had guys like me who spent our summers poring over the Dungeon Master's Guide with a pad of graph paper and a notebook, furiously scribbling down our own killer dungeons and sitting there with 2 or 3 friends on a Saturday.
Yeah, I got to say,
through the Borderlands.
I got to say, drawing dungeons on graph paper is something that I used to do a lot when I was younger, and it's surprisingly enjoyable. It's
It is. It really and truly is. So we, when my generation started hitting their mid 20s and early 30s, we dusted off our AD&D books and said, there's still a lot of good here. I don't have to go out and buy this new Dungeons and Dragons if I don't want to. There's still a lot of fun to be had here. And you can call it nostalgia. You can call it a memory trip or whatever. But, we looked at those books and said, no, there's nothing inherently wrong with this. We were a vocal minority, and the systems, we watched that bloat from the beginning of the 80s to the end of the 90s, 20 years of systems getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter, and not in a good way always. So when we dusted off our gaming books, when we were supposed to be unpacking things from a move, but instead sitting in the floor of a spare bedroom looking through our D&D books, the lights came back on, and they burned just as bright. And so you had at the beginning, well, frankly, me putting my own modules that looked like AD&D modules out there and spamming forums with, guys, AD&D is still awesome. You can still play AD&D. And then it just slowly picked up momentum. And, we had that Father the Sleeper Has Awakened moment. And we looked at what was good. And we've kind of gone back to that. And nowadays, after the confusing ball of fish hooks and netting that was the bloat of late third edition and fourth edition, fortunately, more and more people look at simpler and simpler systems as the way forward. So that's you asked, you opened that can.
I did.
You opened that can, Carl.
It's
So
it's really an interesting can. So yeah, no regrets there.
but that is the how I view the zeitgeist of role-playing games from then until now.
Nice. And about Osric and OSR and stuff like that, how that have evolved from there basically? Because you just mentioned the point where that started to become a really good idea. But what about
Yeah.
the nuts and bolts of it?
So I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, but in the 1980s, TSR, the TSR stood for They Sue Regularly.
I recall
TSR,
that, yes.
yeah, TSR would throw a lawsuit at you for saying the letters TSR. Blooms were exceptionally unfriendly people in that respect. And this continued literally until the day they got bought by Wizards of the Coast. I mean, on her way out, Lorraine Williams tried to demand that Wizards of the Coast not hire Gary Gygax back.
What?
Like, yes, she wanted, as condition of the purchase of TSR's assets by Wizards of the Coast, to be that they would not hire Gary back. They had to sign an agreement saying we will not hire Gary Gygax back.
But
Now they did bring
what?
him on as an independent consultant. She hated him that much.
I mean, did he run over her cat or something? It's like,
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But litigious TSR would they would grab you by the jewels and squeeze until you cried uncle if you published anything. So when you self-published anything. So when Wizards of the Coast said, hey, we've got this thing called the D20 license, we've got the open gaming license.
yeah, I remember that was pretty big stuff when that happened. Yeah.
Yes, it was huge, but everybody was just making 3E stuff or reskinning it as science fiction, but it's really just 3E stuff, or modern, but it's really just 3E stuff. And I shouldn't just say a group of brilliant people and Knights and Knaves, among them Stuart Marshall and Matt Finch. There's his name again. They said, wait a minute. During all these lawsuits that went on, a judge ruled in the United States, you cannot copyright game rules. You can't. Game mechanics. And it was actually not even, it wasn't even TSR that was the primary company involved in this. It was over the creation of the game Trivial Pursuit.
Seriously?
A company released their own set of cards and little wedges, and they got sued. And when they went to court, the judge said, "Look, you can say presenting the rules in this way belongs to you, but you cannot copyright the rules for reading a question off of a card and assigning someone a token for getting it right." And looking back on that, armed with all that legal information, and they did their homework, the Osric creators, they said, fine, Dungeons and Dragons is a concept. It's not a set of specifically presented mechanical rules. They took the open gaming license, they took that information, and they created Osric. Now, I was there when Osric was being created by these brilliant people. I did not. I wrote the entries for 3 monsters in the Osric book. If you get a copy of Osric and you see Bill Sylvie in it, three monsters, guys. I'm not claiming Osric that I was some genius who invented Osric or anything. They were kind enough to let me write 3 monsters. The Sphinx, spiders, and giant snakes. So there you go. But Wizards freaked out.
Okay, about
They were
all right.
But they were in a tizzy over the release of Osric, and there was a lot, as I understand it, there was a lot of back and forth between Wizards of the Coast legal and the creators of Osric, and basically,
Was it because it was a rule set rather than a setting or an expansion or something that would...
Well, it was because Osric is an open source reimplementation of original and advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And it was Wizards of the Coast claim that, no, we didn't say you could do that. And as I understand it, the creators of Osric simply said, you didn't say we couldn't. And then they pointed to the federal judge's ruling in the Trivial Pursuit case and said, right there, you cannot copyright armor class, hit points, strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma, elves, things like Greyhawk, Mordenkainen's.
Because those are intellectual property that you can copyright.
Those are intellectual property. But they said, look, we took the SRD and re-implemented it in a way that we prefer. And we're not selling Osric, we're giving it away. Wizards of the Coast basically just gave up trying to stop it. But because of that, there are now easily a dozen D&D-alike games, classic D&D-alike games. Osric, I mentioned that Vampire was the Chixel Cub meteor impact. That was probably an overstatement. Vampire was the Tunguska meteor. It was a big blast that shook everybody. But the thing that really completely altered the geography of tabletop gaming was Osric, and to a lesser degree, Swords and Wizardry. They completely changed, and it's why stuff like The Lost Crypt could get published. It's why we have Swords and Wizardry. It's why so many independent developers are free to operate and create D&D alikes that are not fettered to the bloat and the dross of 3rd edition and 3.5. So there you go.
What's Swords and Wizardry? I'm not familiar with that.
Swords and Wizardry is Matt Finch's reimplementation of original D&D. I wish I had my Swords and Wizardry box set, but Matt through Frog God, and now he's got his own jam. He's got his own jam. Swords and Wizardry is part of Mythmere Games. But it is original Dungeons and Dragons brought up to modern availability. So, if you don't want to give Wizards of the Coast money by buying OD&D on Drive Through RPG or on the DM's Guild, and you don't want to have to sell a kidney to get one of those, And you also don't want to raise the skull and crossbones and say yo ho ho to get a copy of OD&D. You can get Swords and Wizardry, and Swords and Wizardry is a re-implementation of original Dungeons and Dragons, and it is wonderful and it is beautiful, and there is incredible art, and it is put together by a fantastic team. So if OD&D is more your jam than AD&D, absolutely. And if this sounds like a plug, it is. And I hope that doesn't rile anybody, because Swords and Wizardry is magnificent. And I do recommend you check it out if you want to look at OD&D. I mean, if you've already got OD&D, you might be like, well, I've got OD&D. It's still worth a look. It's still worth a look, because I mean, I don't go to events and take, like, if I'm going to go play OD&D at a comic shop, that doesn't come with me. you know, I,
Yeah, it
I
looks like
don't, I
something
don't
too
risk that
precious
at
to be carrying outside.
yeah, no. That stays at home. I have these Lulu prints of OD&D in the supplements, but I've still got Swords and Wizardry around here. And it's like I said, it's OD&D refined
Okay,
in terms of look and feel. I do recommend
interesting.
Swords and
In the meantime, let's see. Net1 Videos joined us. Evening goal, waiting for pizza to arrive. Nice, bon appetit. Okay, and the Dungeon Minister says, hot dogs here, made it home in one piece. Bless their black, lacquered little heads. Almost made me crash, I was laughing so hard.
what can I say? I can turn a phrase every now and again.
Oh yeah.
Um, I did. Can I mention something from earlier up in the chat real quick?
Go ahead.
Someone was saying I mentioned Roger Dean, and Earthman Brick said Roger Dean does great works, mainly responsible for Signosis and box cover art. I agree. Roger Dean is amazing. I don't know that he's I'm an old fogey. Let me just say that, Earthman Brick. I'm an old fogey. So Roger Dean showing up on Signosis boxes was secondary to me seeing Roger Dean throughout my childhood with my aunts and their Yes albums. So that was how I first encountered Roger Dean, which was doing the artwork for Tales of was it Tales from Topographic Oceans and so on and etc. So I guess we have our different perspectives, but yes, Roger Dean did amazing artwork for Signosis games as well as Yes album covers.
Speaking of artists, I read this week that John Blanche finally retired from Games Workshop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow, that's a shame. Let me tell you what, nothing beats Blanche's cover art for and interior art indeed for so many great Warhammer books. I mean, I'm just going to say flatly, I'm not a GW fan in the least. Ignore these. Ignore my Space Hulk set. No, but yeah, no, his art really set the tone. I mean, you've got that classic piece, the Sister of Battle.
Mhm.
You know the one, she's got the big cybernetic eye and she's looking straight out at the cover with the battle going on behind her. That's one of his, and it's just one of those things that's so iconic, and I'm sure the fans of 40K are going to feel his absence
Yeah, I mean,
from
he defined the whole aesthetic of that whole setting.
yeah. And someone who kind of straddled that, of course, I'm sure you heard about this, was the passing of Russ Nicholson.
Sadly, yes. And again, Russ Nicholson, I played a lot of those. What do you call them? Fighting fantasy game books when I was a
Yep.
kid, and basically, I think he illustrated most of them, if not all of them.
Yes, yes, he did. He did a lot of artwork, of course, in the Fiend Folio, which came out of the offices of TSR UK. And regardless of how I might think about the content, his artwork in there was very evocative. I loved Russ's artwork in that book, and he will be missed. He will
Yeah,
be
for sure.
greatly missed in this field. Um, and that's why I tell people. Um, when I was a kid and I got a copy of Keep on the Borderlands, the names in it were grown-ups far away. And when you're 10, 11, 12 years old, you got to have this perspective that grown-ups just always are. That passing away is something that happens to really old people, but really old people are a separate category of being. There's us, there's older kids, and there's grown-ups, and grown-ups are just eternal. And when I got that copy Keep on the Borderlands and I saw that Gary Gygax or Gygax or whatever it was, I was like, wow, he must be a really cool grown-up. And when I flipped the book open, of course, my first experience was seeing that beautiful owl bear piece by Jim Rosseloff. Everybody knows the one I'm talking about. It's literally the first thing you see when you open Keep on the Borderlands. And I thought, oh man, that just pulled me in. Here's this halfling and these other warriors fighting this owl bear, and the pen and ink drawing was just perfect. And when I started my website up, and I started poking around the web, I said, well, hey, I got a hold of Gary Gygax. I wonder if Jim Rosseloff is available. And lo and behold, I was able to get a hold of Jim, and we communicated back and forth via email kind of irregularly. But I had said, hey, I interviewed Gary. I'd love to interview you next. And he's like, yeah, that sounds great. And I didn't come back around to it, and he passed away.
Oh, no, I'm sorry to hear
And
that.
I Dave Sutherland did the magnificent cover of the Dungeon Master's Guide and of the Monster Manual. Yes, I think the Monster Manual cover is great. Sue me. But he was in ill health, but he put all of his contact details on a web forum and said, hey, if you want to reach out, if you want to call me, if you want to talk to me, go ahead. And I was like, I will do that. And maybe I can interview him. And then he passed away.
Uh-huh.
And the point is not to be morose. The point is the people whose work we enjoyed are, generally speaking, pretty darn accessible. Okay. They're not ivory towered, talk to my people and they'll talk to my people, and then they'll send me an email, which I will show to my people, and then they'll let me know, and then it'll come back down. They're just normal gamer nerds. And the pioneers of this hobby, the real pioneers, Gary and Dave, have left us, and I was fortunate enough to meet and talk to both of them. But the real pioneers in this hobby are getting on. So to your people, to your audience, to anyone who watches this, I say, if you get a chance to meet with these people and they had such a positive impact on you, I loved your drawing in the Teacups and Titans rule manual. Your rules for driving a stompy robot over a village are the best ever written. Take that moment. All right. Don't say, I'll catch him at the next con. He's way over there. I'm not going to bother. Take that minute to express your appreciation, because odds are they'd really like to hear it. They would really enjoy hearing it. I mean, a friend of mine, Tracy Lesh, is an artist, is an original D&D artist. He was 17 when Gary's daughter Elsie introduced him to Gary and said, "Hey, he does really good art, Dad." And Gary handed him an OD&D set and said, "Read this." And Tracy ended up creating the visual for the Mind Flayer, the Roper.
Right?
He did all the art for the very first run of Boot Hill. He did so many other stuff. And when I saw Tracy's name in Art and Arcana, and I said, I wonder if Tracy is on social media, and I found out that not only was he on Facebook, he lived one town over from me here in Central. I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, I would love to get your autograph and I would love to talk to you." And the more we talked, the more we talked, and he told me, he said when this book came out, it was the first time people reached out to him about doing D&D art in 40 years.
Seriously?
Yeah, he'd done so much art. He's written a book, a fantasy novel that he did the cover art for. He was like, yeah. And then when he went to GaryCon in 2017 for the first time, he said, I had fans coming up to me, people saying that they loved my work. He said it was so much fun and it was incredible. And he had no idea.
Oh,
He was an artist who worked on D&D, and he didn't know that all of us were out there and looked and wondered. So if you know these people, now obviously I'm not telling anyone to, harass them to the ends of the earth, but odds are they'd appreciate thanks, your stuff was really awesome moment.
yeah, just don't stand
So
outside their houses with a sandwich board or something.
yeah, no. Don't, and that's it's nice to get people to come and watch my channel. Like I had Errol Otis on week before last. This coming week, David S. LaForce is going to be on. Jim Ward stops by for a visit every now and again. So does Alan Hammock. I started the whole thing interviewing Gary. Just talk to people. Just take that chance and show them that you appreciate what they did, because it's a lot of fun, to feel that melancholy sensation. Well, I shouldn't say fun, but it's better to feel that melancholy sensation of, oh, I just heard that I just heard that so and so passed away. I'm glad I got to meet them. Than I just heard so and so passed away. I wonder if anyone really cared about their contribution to the thing that makes us all so very, very happy. Soapbox over.
100%. I totally agree with that. And Dirty Basement Lane is saying it's usually worth it to stand in that line.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. I have to brag a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Dave LaForce signed my Deities and Demigods. I'm not sure if this is even going to show up on camera, or if this is a fruitless effort, but I got some autographs in my Deities and Demigods. And Dave LaForce.
Okay, they're visible. Lift it up a bit. Up. Okay, I see a drawing of a dragon, signature, and all right, nice.
But I waited in line. I asked him to sign my Deities and Demigods. He did a bunch of great artwork in here, and he drew the dragon in there for me. And that was at 2023 GaryCon. At 2018 GaryCon, he drew a different picture in my Dungeon Master's Guide. It's worth the time, and they do appreciate it. They really, really do appreciate the fans. Just don't be a putz about it.
Oh, Lance Huntsman joined us. Hi, Lance.
Hello, Lance.
We're doing well, thank you. Hope you're also doing great. So before I forget, let me just drop a link to the community showcase on Discord in case anyone wants to drop in any photos of their work to share with us, and we'll be looking at them later. And yeah, so I've been looking at that shelf behind you all evening, and I'm like, apart from your D&D books, do you have any favorites from that collection? Because that looks spectacular.
Apart from D&D, okay, so for just a pickup game,
Hmm?
I'd love Space Hulk. Uh, Space Hulk is just such a phenomenal game. I mean, it encapsulates the totality of a 40K game without, you know,
Without having to sell an
my
arm and the leg to buy an army.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like I got 10 Terminator Marines, you got 20 Gene Stealers, let's rumble, and that's it. That's probably why GW stopped making Space Hulk, because it was, so easy to do. But when it comes to role-playing games back here, uh I'm a big fan of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I keep singing the praises of GW that you guys can't buy. Sorry. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is great. I was big into BattleTech back in the 90s because all my friends were. So I have some BattleTech. That's not bad. I tell you what, though. I tell you what. Call of Cthulhu. Call of Cthulhu, fourth edition, just because it's such a great printing of the book. The rules didn't change.
Sorry about that. I think it's a motorbike outside or something. Oh, that was loud.
I'm sorry.
So there was a motorcycle outside or something that was really loud, so I couldn't hear what you were
Oh,
saying.
no. So, Warhammer Fantasy
Hmm.
Roleplay, BattleTech, I played a lot of in the 90s. I've just kept some of my books from back then because I don't know, nostalgia. But I love Call of Cthulhu,
I hear you.
either 1930s or modern with the Delta Green setting. I love me some Call of Cthulhu. Like if you said, okay, two role playing games you can take with you onto a desert island for a year, um, I would be okay. AD&D and Call of Cthulhu. Those would be my givens there. Um, and I've got a few more kicking around here that I kind of like. Let's see. Twilight 2000 is a lot of fun, but look, I'm just gonna state it straight up. Twilight 2000 is for gun nuts. It's the role playing game for gun nuts.
Okay. Now I understand why Sean likes it so much.
And really the first edition really is that sort of ascending into heavy complexity period. Because like character creation seems simple because you randomly generate 6 stats. Hey, that's D&D. I can do that. After that, it just, man, you're let me tell you what, if you think about running Twilight 2000 first edition at a convention,
Okay.
bring pre-gens. Okay. Say, well, we'll spend a few minutes creating characters. This is not like OD&D where you can hand out note cards to everybody and a pencil and say, take 3 6-sided dice, you know.
Huh?
No, that game gets greebly, but I do love it. I love its alternate setting. I love the idea that you're in one grid square on a map of Central Europe, and every other grid square is labeled "Here be dragons,"
What?
and
What?
that the Americans you run into may not be good guys because they become a marauder band, and the Soviets you run into may not be bad guys. They may want to try and get back to what's left of home in one piece as much as you do. So it's got a great verve to it. It's just not a lightweight game at all.
Yeah. I mean,
So those are some of my
that
favorites
sounds interesting.
from.
What with the character creation? Is it something like Traveler where you have to roll what happens to you in your sixth year of education on Sundays, whatever?
Yeah, it's definitely it's from GDW, the same company that made Traveler, and
Ah, okay.
you can feel those echoes in
Kind of
it. So
family
like,
resemblance, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you could have a grizzled veteran sergeant, I mean, who's literally like, joined the army during the Vietnam War and has served in the US Army all the way through the nuclear exchange and everything like that. And he's super competent and he's got a ton of skills. But because he's been in that long, he's also suffering the effects of post traumatic stress. And he's also probably absorbed a lot of rads. So he might not be doing that good physically, right? So it's kind of a trade off as to what kind of character you want. A fresh green recruit who literally came on the last transports to leave the United States after the missile exchange, who has, you know, no post traumatic stress or very little post traumatic stress and very little radiation exposure. But at the same time, he's of limited resource abilities. Or do you want the veteran or something in between? It's kind of a trade-off. It's like they call it the triangle in tank design. You got firepower, mobility, and armor, and you can't stray towards one without sacrificing the other. This is sort of the same thing. You've got experience, radiation exposure, post-traumatic stress.
Pick two, yeah. So let's see. Doom Source Dungeons is saying Call of Cthulhu is the only thing that ever came close to D&D for me. Earthman Brick is saying Traveler's character creation system is practically its own game. It's that deep. Yeah, that was my impression of it too.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You're basically playing a very complex game of craps. Where if you lose, the character you've been constructing over a period of time croaks, and you get to start again.
yeah,
And
that's embarrassing because the game hasn't even started yet at that point.
there's a T-shirt that I've seen sold in a few different places. It's that white and red font on black, like a Traveler book, but it says "Traveler, my character died during character creation," or "I died."
Let's see. Dungeon Minister is saying, is anyone running Cthulhu for GUOG? And has Bill paged I have no idea. GUOGC.
Guac. You said
Guac?
it. You said it right the first time.
Okay.
So if I may,
Go
I
ahead.
mean, you're the host. So we have last year, last spring in March, I hit 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel, which of course opened up the ability to monetize and a whole bunch of other things. And it was something I wanted to do. I wanted to get 1,000 subs. Make YouTube work for me a little bit. So to celebrate that, I had told people, I said, look, if we hit 1,000 subs, because it was like one sub a week,
I think you're over 4,000 now, yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
It's this is maybe one sub a week, 2 subs a week, 3 subs in a day was like, well, I'm having a fancy beer tonight. But so when I kicked over 1,000 subscribers I'd been telling people in the lead up, I said, if it started out, I said, if we hit 1,000 subs, I'll run a D&D game for you guys online. I'll do a D&D game. And then people said, well, what about a few D&D games? And I said, okay, if we hit 1,000 subs, I'll do like a couple of D&D games. I'll have like an online games day. And then I said, well, and if other people want to run stuff, I guess we can do an online games day kind of thing. And people started throwing around the word convention. So I said, okay, we'll have like a 1-day convention. And then it was like, well, what about 2 days? So, okay, fine, like a Friday and a Saturday. And it just sort of grew, and they dragged me into, well, we're going to have a convention. And so I struggling to come up for a name because I'm obviously very smart. I decided to call it the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention, the GUAC. And so, because guacamole, it's a good
Yeah.
dip with chips. So I called it the GUAC, and we had I don't know, 20, 30 people Probably not even that. If I'd have to ask individual game masters how many folks they had at their virtual tables, but it's not a real play. It's not a, like you don't drive to Florida to come to my house to game. It's just hosted on Discord, and we had some people sign up, and it was mayhem, and it was confusing, and it was a mess, and we loved it. I ran a few games there. Some of the games were a bit ambitious, and I ended up not running them because nobody signed up to play. But when you have a grand total of not more than 20 attendees, that's going to happen. But we had a lot of fun, and immediately after that, I was like, "Well, that was cool." And people are like, "So you're doing Guac 2 next year, right? Next spring, right?" No, I'm not doing Guac 2 next year. And they said, yes, you are. You're doing Guac 2 next year. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing Guac 2 next year. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Yes, I am. So we have it this year, and this year it's going to be bigger and better. We have Frog God, or I'm sorry. Yes, we have Frog God Games sponsoring. We have Hellebarde Games sponsoring. I am surrounded on the floor and out on the table with swag that
Oh, nice.
one of our channel super fans, Jack Photon, has provided. Not just provided, like he didn't just go out and buy stuff and say, "Here you go, that's giveaways at the con." Like he busted his ass and put together books, like handmade
Oh,
books,
wow.
homegrown D&D books to give out as convention giveaways. Doomsword is running a first edition AD&D tournament with cash prizes.
All right.
Dungeon Minister, both last year and this year, has made the merch. Let me see if is my pint glass out here. Yes, my pint glass is out here. This is last year's. I'm not sure if that's showing up well on the camera.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's some of the merch. If you go to his Spring website, like it's Teespring or something, but look up the Dungeon Minister on Teespring, and you'll find we have T-shirts, mugs, glasses, a sports bra. I'm not making that up.
Seriously?
Seriously, dice bags, all kinds of stuff. Basically, anything that Teespring will print something off. We have the Guac 2023 logo on it. So and Doomsword says there's one spot left in his cash prize AD&D first edition tournament. We have lots and lots and lots of fun stuff lined up, and it's going to be a stone groove. I had hoped that by the time we hit that we would hit 5,000 subscribers by the time of the con, which is it's the 22nd to the 25th of June. We're probably not going to. We're like 700 away, 800 away. But or is it less than that? I haven't looked at my numbers lately, but I was going to do a giveaway of not my AD&D books, but the high quality color repros of the AD&D books in a drawing, and an OD&D reprint set in a drawing. But I don't think we're going to hit 5,000 subs by then. So maybe we'll do something next year. But it's gonna be a ton of fun, and I don't know how to share a link with you, and I know if I put it in YouTube, it will not work because YouTube doesn't let you put links in chat.
Tell you what, maybe you can send it to me on Discord, and I can bring it from there.
Yeah, okay. Let me pull that up real quick. But it's I think it's convention. Find this. Yeah, here we go. So
okay.
and I will send that to you, and well, here it comes.
Okay. So hang on to your
So yeah,
horses. Okay, found it.
I just shot it to you there, and yeah. So anybody really is welcome to come and run any kind of fun, old school type games. And yeah, I'm gonna kind of lean into that. Yeah, old school. Um,
Okay, just posted the link in there under your channel link. So yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe you could call it Billcon for short. It might be a bit more concise.
they got to you, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
They got to you. You son of a bitch, you got to it. Oh my God, they got you. Oh.
Yeah, I saw them
Uh,
saying in the chat how much you hated that. So let's just throw it out.
we have fun. We have fun, but yeah. So the great underground on and folks have said, hey, will you do this in real life? I would do it to celebrate 10,000 subscriptions. Now, let me tell you, I jokingly said after I hit 1,000 subs, I said, and if I hit 10,000 subs, I'll do an in real life convention, because it took me years and years and years to get 1,000 subs. I back 2014, I think 2015
All right.
to last March. Well, back in January, when Wizards of the Coast shot themselves in the foot,
Uh, yeah.
and I started doing videos about it, I got into the algorithm for YouTube because those were hot button topics.
Mhm.
And in when I released, like, in 2 days, I released like 6 videos between like January 17th and the 18th, just because every minute Wizards was doing something terrible and worse.
They haven't stopped. they're still
And
they're still
they
at it.
haven't stopped. They haven't stopped. But I was releasing videos, like memos were being leaked out of Wizards that I was getting my hands on, and I was doing short videos about. And I was like, I was like Peter Finch in Network. I was like, I'm a human being, God damn it, my life has value. Play Dungeons and Dragons. And so I went overnight. Like I sat here with the metrics up for YouTube, and it was spinning like an odometer on a car going at high speed, just watching the subs go up. And I realized at that point I might have made a mistake when I said I'll do it. 10,000 subs, but it's cooled down somewhat. I've kind of slipped down a little bit on because people were telling me, like some of my regular viewers were like, yeah, I log out of YouTube completely, and when I go to the YouTube front page, you're on it. And that was humbling and kind of awe-inspiring, that I was moving the needle enough that YouTube put me there, for a little while. And so literally in the space of just a few weeks, I went from 1,500 subscribers to the high 3,000s, like just almost 3,000 subs, like that. And it's been a slow rise since then. So I'm not quite to 5,000. So again, I return to what I said, which is, if my channel ever hits 10,000 subs, then I'll do an in real life, yes, you will come here, yes, I'll have a space for it, actual convention. But I'm not doing it before then.
Dirty Basement Rain is saying they're running out of body parts to shoot with all that crap they're pulling. Yep, you're not wrong.
Yeah, they're going to have to buy the Hero System Advantage extra limbs to get more feet to put bullets into over there at Wizards of the Coast. And there's a lot of stuff that people have come out and asked me, like, "Oh, are you going to talk about this again?" And I'm like, I would like to think that since, because there's really, we have an alleged news service that is incredibly left biased here in the United States, Public Broadcasting System, PBS. And they basically did a hit piece that was released the 1st of January about how us old schoolers are,
Are all right wingers and hate
yeah,
women and people of color and
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, we're all a bunch of fascists. And the reason we don't want to play 5th edition is because Gary too was a Yahtzee. And so they released it. We jumped on them on social media. They unpinned the link in their Twitter feed, and so it got pushed down by other stories. Then they released it again with a slightly different description and pinned it again, and they got jumped on. And it just kept happening over and over and over. And I did a couple of short videos about that, but it didn't really blow up. But I absolutely think, if I can go Alex Jones on you for a minute here, I tried to warn you, people. They're putting stuff in the water. I absolutely think that video was done with a collaboration of Wizards of the Coast. It didn't happen in a vacuum. Someone at NPR did not just wake up one morning and say, I hate Gary Gygax. I'm going to do a hit piece on old school gamers. It didn't happen that way. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't old school gaming wasn't a hot topic to begin with, so why bring it up?
Yeah, why jump out there? So I definitely think that was Wizards of the Coast stirring the pot. And they did it as a pre-distraction to make old school gamers look bad while they demolished the OSR quietly, but it didn't work out that way.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of like to push people towards the 6th edition or 1D&D or whatever you're calling it today.
Oh, unquestionably. But through all of my videos, as angry as I've gotten, and I have gotten angry, and I'm not necessarily 100% proud of that, what I have tried to maintain is, whether you play 5th edition with all of the toppings, or you play original D&D with chainmail and outdoor survival, and anything in between, we're all D&D players. What Wizards of the Coast was doing was hurting us all. And I would say in my videos, as ranty as I would get, it's all about us. We've got to stick together, and we've got to dig our heels in, and we've got to fight against this. Osric, OSR, AD&D, Swords and Wizardry, you're a 2nd edition fan, you love 3.5, you love Pathfinder, you started with fantasy superheroes in 4th edition, or you just got in the door with 5th edition and you wanted to do your own thing. It hurts all of us. It hurts all of us, and all of us have to stick together. And my message was not outrage bait. My message was not, woo, look at what they did. Look at how bad they screwed up. Woo. It was and is and remains positivity. Be positive. Let's be there for each other, because Wizards isn't. Wizards is in the hand of corporate oligarchs who want to suffocate creativity. And I don't care whether you're a left-leaning, Green Party type person who views capitalism as the sickest sin to be visited on mankind, or whether you're a right-wing libertarian who eats beef 5 times a day and lives on a plot of land you affectionately call the AR-15 ranch, and anything in between. This hurts all of us, and we all have to stay together and vigilant against this, which is why I report on these things, not to be black-pilled, not to be doom and gloom, not to outrage bait. So when things come up, and things have come up that are hot button issues, there's a lot of things that I passed on, Karl, because It is outrage baiting. I think it's more important to talk about the Pinkerton Agency, a horrible, horrible company. Well, they have a horrible, horrible history raiding a man's house.
Yeah.
Because if they'll go after him for Magic the Gathering cards, what'll they do to people selling their own homebrew D&D modules that don't follow OGL 1.1?
I'll tell you the truth. When I first read that, that sounded like, I was reading it before I had my morning coffee and was like, did I open a cyberpunk rulebook by mistake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they sent corporate mercenaries after a dude over a piece of cardboard for a children's game. So maybe my channel growth is slowed. Maybe I could go out there and be like other channels and, film through a black and white filter with aviators and leather gloves on and scream and point at the camera, or, behind a cartoon image and talk about the impending death of Wizards of the Coast any day now, every day, just to churn and just to feed the algorithm. I'd rather be known as the old school guy who tries to band people together to get us into the camp, to get us behind the wall in the Gap of Rohan, because here come the Wizards of the Coast orcs, right? That's, if I'm going to be remembered for anything, if I keel over 5 minutes from now, I want people to say, Bill
Don't do
was.
that.
No, I won't. You'd have it. Your views on this video would just skyrocket, dude.
Yeah, let's try not to do that and not do that anyway.
No, that's fine. But the point remains. I'd rather be remembered as the guy who saw these things, warned people about these things, and tried to help people get to shelter or at least understand what was happening, and not the guy who, just sat there going, well, here's more doom and gloom.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't put up any videos or anything about the whole open gaming license thing because I didn't really think I had any skin in that particular game. I'm not really. I don't think I've bought anything from Wizards since third edition. That's a good 20 years ago. And besides, it was kind of it's a legal issue. There were other people who could put in much more informed commentary on it. Literally, the only thing I could do there was pour fuel on the fire. So I totally get what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's like I said, there's getting out of the car and pushing, and there's getting out of the car and jumping up and down and screaming that we're screwed. How are we going to get anywhere now? We're screwed. You can push and realize that we're in a bad situation and try to stop blocking traffic, or you can tear your hair out and throw ashes on your head and everything else. And it's a fine line. It's an exceptionally fine line, but I feel like I would like to think, and if my audience feels otherwise, they'll let me know. I know they will. And many have said, look, man, you're just, you're getting unhinged in this. Wizards, a letter to influencers got leaked, and Wizards of the Coast basically said, oh, we're behind you influencers 100%. Don't let these people grind you down. We understand if you have to take a break from being an influencer for your own mental health care, while they were grinding their heel on creators, like actual creators, people like me, because I write.
Yeah.
I don't just make YouTube videos, I write. And I that letter leaked. I got a leaked copy, and it was at 11 o'clock at night after I had already done a stream and I had an exceptionally stressful day. Let me just say, I didn't choose to push the car that it's broken down to the shoulder randomly.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes too much is too much.
Yeah, and when I did the video, was I in the best place? Probably not. It's still up there. I didn't take it down, and I won't take it down, and I won't delist it. But I did release it. But there were some people in the comments who said, "Dude, I get it, but you're And there were people who never subscribed to my channel and probably never will subscribe to my channel, who straight out came and said, you suck. You're just like ranty and screaming and being incoherent. And I didn't scream, but I was being pretty ranty. So I like it when people keep me in check like that and say, this is not who you are. You're disaster baiting and chill, my dude. Because again, I want to be the friendly guy that you can run up to at a con and say, "Hey, come play DCC. Hey, run an OD&D game for us." Which happened at GaryCon. I had people like run up to me and ask to take their picture with me, and
Nice.
another fellow asked to sign something. It was very, very strange. I have fans. It wasn't constant, right? It was literally two people. Literally two people. But still, people were like, "Are you the dungeon delver?" And I was like, "Yeah." And half the time, or I shouldn't say half the time, but I kind of wondered for a split second, should I have a riot shield? Bringing that up. Yes. So, I just gotta stay. I gotta stay focused, and I gotta focus on the positivity, and that's what I hope everybody else does.
Okay, so let's catch up with the comments here in a sec. So let's see. Earthworm Brick, Wizards isn't in control of oligarchs. It's monopolized by Hasbro and falls under their umbrella. It would be better if it was oligopolistic. There would be equal competition and representation. uh, Maybe I would have to think about it, but honestly, the way they've been doing it, I think even if it was run by monkeys, it might be more consistent at this point in time. Lance Huntsman, I am almost completely in the dark about this. You lucky person. I have heard.
Lance, keep playing AD&D and ignore me.
I have
You're
heard.
way better off, brother.
I have heard you guys talk about this some, but can you all explain why Wizards is doing all this?
Woo. Carl?
I think the simple answer is money. They did say that they were feeling under monetized, so they're doing, to try to squeeze every penny out of it. But really, if you want to get the long answer to that, I suggest you head over to Bill's channel and watch some of the streams. He's explaining it in much more detail there than we can go over in one stream here.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see. Go for it painting. Hello. Go for it painting. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, let's see. Questboard Terrain is saying, I've only played 5e and like it, mostly. I can't make assumptions about the beliefs of those who prefer earlier versions and hope no one will make the assumption about me for liking 5e. Let's put it this way. I mean, making an assumption about someone because of a particular game they play is like making an assumption about I assume they're bad people because they're bald or because they wear gray shirts or based on the brand of coffee they drink. It's like, is that really enough information to decide something like that?
It's not. One thing I'll tell you, Questboard Terrain, and you, Carl, after you get through reading the rest of the comments here, I know you wanted to get caught up.
Oh yeah, just one more. Sean Raider is saying new sub.
Oh. I hope that's for both Carl and for me.
Yeah, Sean has been in on my channel for a while. He's a great guy.
Oh, excellent. Well, then, if that was directed at me, Sean, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And so, if I can address Questboard Terrain a little bit obliquely, our hobby, Questboard, needs gatekeepers. Yes, I said that out loud. Our hobby needs to be gate kept. Here is the gate. Here is the complex, difficult to get through, iron barred portcullis with a puzzle lock on the windlass gate. Do you want to play Dungeons and Dragons? Do you want to take 1 to 3 or more hours out of a day and pretend to be an elf? Yes? Come on in. That's literally it. That's literally the cost of entry that I want people to exact. And I've said, now if someone's like, well, I just want to be in the scene, I just want to be seen doing the cool nerd thing, maybe think about doing something different and then coming back around if you really want to play D&D. Questboard, you have you have the essence of it. Look, I poke fun at newer editions of D&D. You punk kids with your skateboards and your Walkman, with your long hair and your skinny jeans and your soy lattes and your automatic transmissions. It's what I do. It's on the tin. But at the end of the day, my dude or dudette, I don't, however you identify, what you love to play, what you enjoy playing is what you play. Look, if somebody had walked up to me and slapped Keep on the Borderlands out of my hands and said, no, you're not doing it right. You need to order one of the OD&D sets from from TSR in Lake Geneva, or you're not playing D&D right.
Yeah,
I might have started crying because I was 11 years old, but I just would have been like, what? Okay, well, apparently, unless I do it your way, I can't play, and I wouldn't play D&D, and then you guys wouldn't have me. I'd have a channel where I'd be talking about, I don't know, fly fishing or whittling or roof repair or something, if anything at all. But the point remains, and your hoverboards, exactly. You kids with your hoverboards. But if you love the game, I mean, let me tell you, I have never had someone who by preference plays 4th edition or 5th edition or 3rd edition or 3.5 or Pathfinder play OD&D or AD&D with me at a store event or at a convention, and when they're done, they said, well, that sucked. I hated that old version of D&D. I'm sorry I played it. I wish I'd spent my time differently than playing D&D, older D&D. But the same goes in reverse. If someone said, Bill, I would really like it if you'd play D&D with us. Will you play my game? It's 5e. And guess what, kids? I've done it. Okay. I've had a good time. Sure, why not? Let's do that. Let's play some D&D. Let's pretend to be elves and slay some orcs.
Yeah, that's one thing, for example, is that
Absolutely.
when people get very religious about rule sets, I mean, the game isn't
It,
rules. It's the game is the story you're telling, the stuff that your fellow players come up with. It's the atmosphere. It's not the order in which you roll dice. Those are just the rules.
yeah,
They could be anything.
yeah. Your first D&D game, the first time you set foot in the cave, the first time you pick up a sword out of a chest and it glows faintly, the game master describes its perfect balance and that it seems to swing with no effort at all. That's the best D&D. That is the best D&D because you will get a feeling unlike anything else you've enjoyed when you first play an RPG, and that's the best D&D. Even if it doesn't say D&D on it, even if it says, I don't know, Hero System or Call of Cthulhu, but then the sword is probably cursed and will whip around and stab. But the point remains, and that is that love D&D and love what you do. If you want to come down here where all the cool kids are, at this side of the pool where we're blasting classic rock and shooting spitballs out of our soda straws at you guys and see what we're up to, that's cool too, man. But just love it and enjoy it regardless of who you are and regardless of what you do.
Campaign Terrain says, hoverboards, I think you just created a new RPG monster.
Hoverboards. I love it. This legless attack pigs,
Hey, the Plunder then joined us. Hi, Redex. Nice to see you. Okay, so let's jump onto an entirely different subject.
Absolutely. Get me off my soapbox, please.
Okay, I see a whole lot of miniatures back there.
Oh, those, yes. Well, these are all spirits and ghosts, which is why they're all gray, Carl.
Oh, okay.
They're specters. They're undead. They're way. No, these are my shelves of shame. Unpainted minis, and there are some absolutely wonderful miniatures. My shelf of glory. I wish I could take credit for all of these, but a great many of these were painted by friends, by my wife. This black dragon over here, that's actually a Warhammer Fantasy Battles. I don't even know if that's in shot, but my
Yeah,
wife did
it's in
that.
shot, yeah. It's not very clear
Yeah,
because it's a bit far away, but it's visible.
yeah. And so many of those were painted by friends as well as by me. But yeah, I have a great many miniatures here that are waiting on paint, which, with all this free time that I've got, I will paint someday. I mean, even if I just slot paint them. I actually a good guy who just started his YouTube channel, Paint Minis Live, said, "Hey, we'd love to paint a miniature or miniatures for you, and we're willing to invest this much money." And I said, "I'll go you one better. How about this? How about I pick 4 minis or sets of minis out of here, put it to a vote, and if my subscribers, or when my subscribers settle on what unpainted minis that I put up to vote they want to see you guys paint, I'll send that to you. That way you don't have to spend
Oh,
any money
nice.
in their.
Is that the poll you had on your channel today?
It is. It
All right.
is. So if you're subscribed, please go over there. If you haven't, look in the community section of my YouTube channel and vote. Right now, the strong leader is the Grenadier Red Dragon lair, which I have the box for. This is an absolutely beautiful piece.
Oh,
By Grenadier, and unlike a great many Grenadier pieces, I don't think the mold exists for this anymore.
oh,
So this isn't just made out of lead; it's made out of unobtainium. And by the way, I was using that word a long time before Avatar, the James Cameron movie came out. People are like, "Oh yeah, I get it, the Navi, yeah, Pandora." I'm like, no. But I have a little bit of D&D history with that miniature, not that specific one.
okay.
But when I was a kid here in the United States, there was a large retail chain called Zayre's. And Zayre's is where I got some of my first D&D stuff. I got my copy of Slave Pits of the Undercity there. I think I got some dice there, but I could be mistaken. But they had a section of Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Now, by the 1980s, Zayre's as a brand, as a company, was going downhill quickly. They went out of business in, I guess, the mid late 80s. But they had terrible theft, shrink, they call it. They had terrible shrink, and the
How
toy
come?
department, I think they just didn't bother. Um, And I remember going in one night, mom and dad were shopping. I'm like, I want to go to the toy department. Okay. And there was shrink wrapped on a shelf was that dragon set.
Ooh.
I was like, that is so cool. Look at that. And it was heavy because it's all lead, it was all lead pieces inside. The next time I went to Zayre's, the box was there. The shrink wrap was off.
Oh dear.
So I kind of looked around and I eased the top off, and my breath was taken away because here was this gorgeous, it was brand new lead casting. So it was silvery,
Hmm.
silver white. Just huge. It seemed gigantic to me. when I was a kid. Like, oh my gosh, look at that. This molded pile of treasure, these little baby dragons and then dragon eggs. And the thing that caught my eye the most was this little envelope of gemstones to glue to the treasure pile. And
Oh, right.
that was amazing. Next time we went back to Zare's, the box was there. There were a few pieces of the dragon inside.
Oh man.
And not much else. And after that, I didn't see it again.
So
But
it was kind of shoplifted by installments or something like that?
yeah. Somebody basically stole it on the installment plan, as you say. But I had been fascinated by that, and I was lucky enough. So many of the odds and ends that I've got, I picked up in the early 2000s when I was sort of ramping up on D&D. But I found one of those on eBay, complete. It's that one, complete, unassembled. Whoever had owned it had, bless their little hearts, they had tried to paint it. So I cleaned it off with some simple green, and I assembled it, and I pinned the wings on with little steel nails, dremeled them out so they'll stick. And I've got it. It's you can't see it, and I'm not gonna show everybody my fat gut over to get it, but I have it, and it's always been like I've always wanted that piece painted up. So I hope it wins the vote to get painted by Paint Minis Live.
Is it one of those pieces where you're thinking, okay, I really want to paint this, but I don't feel my skills are up to it right now, so I'm just going to leave it there till I get more experience, kind of thing?
It is. Now, I paint with the 3-foot rule. Basically, your arm about 3 feet long, and if it looks good at that distance, you're fine. The majority of the minis that I painted are painted with a 3-foot rule in mind. I've gone full ham and just detailed the heck out of stuff before. I painted, I managed to score one of the metal Saint Celestine minis from 40K.
Okay.
And I painted it for my wife just because I thought it was just a badass looking piece. And I painted that over the course of weeks because I did the whole, three hair
full detail, yeah.
detailing. But like, I will actually get up and show you this. One of my favorite modules to run for tournament events is the classic White Plume Mountain by Lawrence Schick. It's a great funhouse dungeon module. And in it, at the end, there's this massive menagerie. It's like an inverted ziggurat with these different levels that are separated by these plexiglass, or it's described as glass, not plexiglass, but these glass panels. And the bottom of the menagerie has manticores in it.
Okay.
And I bought 3 WizKids Manicores, and I'm not sure if that'll show up decently on camera at all, but that is about as close as anyone on the table would ever get to them, because they're at the bottom of this giant styrofoam menagerie that I built.
See, okay.
And, I painted this guy in about 20 minutes.
Okay.
All 3 of them took me a little less than an hour to paint, and it's slot painting. It's it's
it looks good at your feet.
Yeah, exactly. It's brown. It's got a brown ink wash, and then I hit it with a dry brush highlight. Done.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's the majority of what I paint is that. But going back to the Grenadier Dragon, I didn't want to treat it that way. And I knew I might not ever really be able to clear off the time to give such an iconic, classic piece of metal the love that it needs. That one day I would either get frustrated and slot paint it like I did the Manicores, and then always look at it and regret doing it and never go back around to stripping it and doing it properly. or it would simply never get done. It would sit there and gather dust and be the piece that I never painted, and
I get it.
the rest of the stuff would go on the curb when I finally croak. So when Paint Minis Live said we want to do this, and I said, let's do it this way, I put the Red Dragon in there, and it's currently let me look. I'm going to be rude and look at my own YouTube page here real quick. So if I go over and look in community, yeah, the Red Dragon Slayer is leading by 47%. The first one is the Grenadier Hirelings set with 21%. But I have a feeling by next Friday, or next Saturday rather, it's going to be, or I should say this Saturday, 6 days from now, it's the Red Dragon Lair is going to be the piece, and regardless which one it is, because like I've got the Grenadier Hireling set, I've got the Wizard Room, the Grenadier Wizard Room set, but I've also got my classic Games Workshop metal Deathwing Terminators from like
those
1989.
Yeah.
And my wife bought those for me as an anniversary present back in 2012.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a neat box with some history because it was clearly bought in the UK. It's got a £14.99 price sticker on it. And I love the fact that once upon a time, kids, Games Workshop sold metal, and they only charged the equivalent of 20 American dollars for 5 miniatures. GW doesn't sell a single miniature for less than $20 now. And
I'll raise you another one. Citadel Miniatures Ogres, they're not in the box right now. Yeah. All right. 5 miniatures. The box is from 1986. Try to guess the price.
What was the price?
$5.50 sterling.
Yeah, $5.50 sterling.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. Yes, Games Workshop, once upon a time, you turned a profit without bending people over a barrel. Once upon a time, you did that. Remember that? Because I do. I mean, I didn't buy it, and I still regret it because it was the princely sum of $29.99. The Space Hulk First Edition set, and Deathwing was like $15.99. God, I wish I'd bought those. Not so I could flip them now, like, oh, now it'd be worth hundreds of dollars. So I could have it to play it, because the original Deathwing was one of the best things GW ever did.
Yeah, I think we were talking on the Discord a couple of days ago about the smaller games and the board games that they made. Like, I think specifically we were talking about Tyrannid Attack and stuff like Manowar, which was I think one of their best. I think it was the only fantasy naval board game for a very long time.
Yeah. This game right here, my buddy Rob, and if you're watching this, Rob, hi, Rob. My buddy Rob ran a game store and had this in stock and bought himself a copy. Okay. This is by Games Workshop. This is by GW now. Okay. This is a historical, not fantasy historical, not like, yeah, it's historical, but there's wizards and so on in it. This is a historical game of Europe from the year 1000 to the year 1300, and you play kings and queens.
Nice.
It is a quasi role-playing game. It's a bit like Risk or Diplomacy. It's that kind of game, but you actually make up characters. You have stats for characters, okay, and go around and you try to conquer parts of Dark Ages to medieval Europe. And we played this for probably 6 months because we extended our campaign an extra 100 years to 1400. And this game was an absolute blast. Now, I'm sure
so those 6 months were the same campaign kind of thing?
Yeah.
Nice.
We had generations of lineal families. I didn't win by terrain. I actually ended up with the Rome province of
Hmm.
Italy. So it was decided basically that I had politically seized the church
Okay.
because all my armies had been forced back into the Rome province, but not so much force as I sold off pieces of Italy. I had to make back deals with other players, like, um, hey, Craig, I'll sell you the Sicily province for 100 crowns. And you think about it, it's a seaport. It produces a couple of luxuries and a couple of food. Okay, so I basically, they decided that I had politically seized the Vatican and was the actual power in Europe because everybody else had lots of terrain, but I had all the money in the Rome province. But this was a fantastic game, and I'm sure some bean counter at Games Workshop could say, "Oh, mate, it didn't sell well." I don't know why he'd be Australian, but there you go. Um, but no, this was back once upon a time. GW actually made good games.
I'm sure you remember Talisman as well, which is uh, it's a really old board. Yeah, I think the first edition was in the 80s as well.
Yeah,
You just have to be very patient when playing it because one game can take absolutely forever. But that's a great game for large groups of people.
yeah. We a buddy of ours, Kent, God rest his soul, Kent played a game of Talisman with us as a break from our D&D game. We my in-laws were very into the 3M and Avalon Hill box games back in the 70s and 80s. My wife's father was, and um, so when Kent suggested we play Talisman, Colleen said, "Well, we should, see if my folks want to play," and we did, and we played from like 2 in the afternoon till 8 in the evening, and I think we each got like 5 or 6 moves. It, it was a pretty. I liked it. Don't get me wrong, but it is one of those
It
you
can
got to
take
have a
time,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it is fun because there's a club around here where I am no longer allowed to play the thief in that game.
I'm sorry, you're no longer to what?
I'm no longer allowed to play the thief in that game.
Oh man, there's a story there. I'll have to have you on my show and that one. That's great, dude. Um, Another good one, and this is actually not them, but unfortunately, you can actually still buy this one, unlike every other thing that I've showed people today. Is Dungeon from TSR. Wizards of
All
the
right.
Coast has it now, but Dungeon is a fantastic game,
Okay.
and you can play Dungeon in the space of a couple of hours. It was created by Dave Migary. He was part of Dave Arneson's D&D group, and he wanted something because Dave Arneson ran when Dave Arneson was just using chainmail fantasy
Mhm.
and his own kind of made up on the spot rules in his head and a few notes he'd scribbled down. Um, Arneson or Dave Migary said, "Well, it's not fair that Dave DMs for us constantly, and he doesn't ever get a chance to play." So Dave Migary created Dungeon and a simple rule set. He cut pasteboard to make the game cards and just cribbed a pair of D6s because that was probably all they were using at the time over in Minneapolis, and put this together. And Dave Arneson was over the moon that he actually got to play in a quasi RPG war game scenario that had an end game. So, there's no, like, well, we're going to play this for 6 months every night. I mean, you could play it for 6 months every night, but you'd be playing a different game, probably multiple games every night. I ran it at the first Guac last year, in fact, but No, uh, when basically me Gary got in touch with TSR and Dungeons and Dragons started to take off, and Gary played it and loved it and was champing at the bit. So TSR published Dungeon and in different or variations in the sense of presentation. The rules have never significantly changed for the
Okay.
game, nor is the map or anything, but different presentations. But yeah, people out there listening, grab a copy of Dungeon. Go to, if you need the old school and you can verify that it's everything is intact, pick up a TSR copy off of eBay or someplace like that. But if you buy it at Amazon or something, the one that Wizards of the Coast actually started to republish, you're getting the same game. That's the one thing that they left alone. They didn't screw was Dungeon.
Yet, yet.
But no, Dungeon is a lot of fun. So sorry, this is your chat, not my chat. I'm sitting there staring at the comments like, who should I answer? Oh wait, no,
No,
this is my.
let's just go over them because yeah, I've been seeing some fun things going on. But first of all, Sean is saying Dungeon is a great game, and Campaigner is saying I have not played Talisman since about 1988. Yeah, it's been a while. Dirty Basement Rain, Wylock did a series on building White Plume Mountain. Yeah, it was a full dungeon build. I don't know if you follow Wylock's armory, but he literally built the whole complex.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I just did the and I you can tell me if you want to see it or if if your folks in the audience. I just did the menagerie itself, but the whole dungeon, that's pretty cool. I don't have enough room for it, but I have laid out sections of it in Dwarven Forge.
Okay, do we have any photos of it maybe or something like that?
Let me think. Not on this computer, unfortunately. But yeah, I've got a few pictures. The old dungeon maps,
Hmm.
you might, if you've got a 3D printer, which I do, and you're like, well, I'm just going to print out enough terrain to make, or I'm gonna cut enough foam board, or you don't have to have a 3D printer. You don't have to have Dwarven Forge. You need time and the ability to
Glue things
glue
together. Yeah.
things together. That's a hot glue gun is $1.49. I'm not making that up at the dollar store. But when you start to make this stuff, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna put the Tomb of Horrors up, and I'm gonna run it for my players. And then you realize that at 2-inch scale, the Tomb of Horrors is like 8 feet long and 6 feet wide.
Yeah, Wylock's armory also built Tomb of Horrors, and I think it took up. He did this thing where he laid it all out, and I think it took up most of his garage.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge. I have just enough room on this table when nothing else is on it, which would mean my studio lights, my monitors, my mic, everything. I have just enough room on this table, and I have the Dwarven Forge to do it, to lay out one level, the castle
Hmm.
level of Secret of the Slaver's Stockade. It looks really, really neat. And when I did it for a group I was playing D&D with back in the middle 2010s, I left it out for months,
Just because
because
it looked good, kind of thing. All right.
it looked good, and it took so long to put up. It took so long. I was putting cardboard on top of it so I could gain access to my table again, so I could set things back on because I didn't want to take it down. I'm like, I have so many boxes I have to put stuff back in. But I eventually ended up disassembling it and putting it all away. But damn, it looked good. But yeah, when I did, again, I have enough Dwarven Forge to make White Plume Mountain, and I printed the pieces that I didn't. But it's a beast, and I ran it in its full glory in 2016, like
Hmm.
December of 2016. I went to a friend's comic store, and it was a lot of event tables, and it took me 3 hours to set up. I
Well,
mean, the game started at noon, or rather, the game started at 4. I got there at noon, and I was rushing to get it done. Like, I sweat pouring down me because they had brought out lights to make sure everyone would be able to see it, and I felt like I'd run a
oh,
marathon setting that up.
oh man. Let's see. Dirty Basement Terrain. I was in a group that if you painted some of the minis from the shelf, you would get extra experience points at the end of the session. That group had a lot of painted minis.
I would absolutely. I wish I'd thought of that when I was doing, or my groups all went virtual. I would absolutely have done that. That's brilliant. That is brilliant. God, I wish I thought of that. Man,
Okay,
uh,
Lance Huntsman is saying, ah yes, all those lead figures we used to use. Just look at me, I am fine from using them. And Campaign
yeah.
Terrain says, but they tasted so good.
I like gamer candy. Dirty Basement had mentioned Raul Partha. Yeah, I mean, if you still want to get old school minis, most of the more interesting Grenadier minis are still made by Miraliton. I'll type it out, not the whole URL, but let's try to actually type it. Miraliton.it. So if you go to Miraliton.it and look under there, I think it's Dragon Lords line.
Alright?
All of the AD&D box sets, Expert Hirelings, Wizard's Room, Orc Tribe, Magic Users, Female Dungeon Adventurers, all of those sets. You'll kind of have to dig through and rely a little bit on your memory to go, was that the one that had this in it? But you can absolutely get those classic Grenadier minis. Many of them, not all of them. Like I said, they don't have the red dragon anymore, which is a shame. I wish that mold would turn up somewhere and somebody would start making them again. Just so other people could share in the fun
Yeah,
of having that.
yeah, that's
But
some.
nowadays, metal
Second?
miniatures are. Go ahead.
Sorry, I lost it somewhere. You said metal miniature, is it?
Oh yeah, metal miniatures anymore. There are companies that absolutely do make them. Dark Sword, Dark Sword makes such beautiful minis. Like, I buy Dark Sword minis and immediately feel guilty for doing it, not because I already have enough minis to paint, but because I know my paint will be not good. Like, their miniatures are too good for my painting. And
Okay.
Otherworld makes AD&D miniatures. I mean, they look like advanced Dungeons and Dragons illustrations out of the Monster
Okay.
Manual and Player's Handbook and stuff. They're amazing. And those of you who are subscribed to my show, the opening credits, when I do the camera pan across the Dwarven Forge dungeon, you've seen I have their demon idol, which is the cover of the
Okay.
AD&D Player's
That's where this from.
Handbook.
Alright.
Yeah, that's the statuette.
Other words, yeah.
He's he's over here, but it's perfect. It is a perfect representation of what the demon idol, the thieves are prying the gems out, and you have the adventurers standing around the front of it because they've slain the lizard men there. But Otherworld makes amazing stuff, and there are a great many companies that still do metal miniatures, but they tend to be a little bit on the pricey side these days. Nowadays, it's resin cast, or as I do now most of the time. If I want a thing, I'll download an STL and just 3D print.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's increasingly becoming a niche thing, metal casting and so on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can find companies that do it, and the ones that do are, exceptional at it. But the days of going into a hobby store and
And
you
it's
know,
all metal stuff, yeah.
yeah,
I think those
like
times are over.
two
Okay.
249 for a metal miniature. When was the last time you saw that? 1998,
Possibly, yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Earthman Brick is asking, I see you're a fan of Fallout. What do you think of the Wasteland Warfare game and the Fallout RPG?
I have not played either one yet. People are telling me to try out the Fallout RPG. Those of you who know me know that my budget is this much by and large. So we'll just have to see if one falls out of a truck into my hands. No, I would like to give Fallout a gander. It's one of those things that I think if you really had that itch, you could use a rule system you already have. I mean, a Gamma World. Gamma World is another. I can't believe I didn't mention Gamma World. We were talking about games that aren't D&D that I love. I love Gamma World. And Gamma World, you just adjust a few knobs here and there, and hey, presto, you've pretty much got the Fallout experience. You just play some classic late 1940s popular songs while you game, and hold up printed out screenshots and say, this is what you see, and hey. But no, I have not played the Fallout tabletop games yet. Maybe I'll get a chance to give those a look one day. I like the concept because, I mean,
Yeah, I love this series of games. I
yeah.
haven't tried the RPG either, but yeah, I love the whole Fallout vibe. Okay, so Bill, what do you say we jump into Discord and see what people have thrown to the community channel?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Let's have a quick gander over there. Where is your I could have sworn I was in your Discord already.
Maybe not, but for now we can. I'm going to be sharing the screen with you so we can see what's on at the time. You should be able to see it on my display.
All right. Let me see if I can zoom that in there. You know what? I gotta get my old man goggles on here. Hang on a second.
Take your time.
You hit a certain age, kids, and that 10-point font in the classic AD&D books, and painting a 28 millimeter miniature pretty much requires something like these. It'll happen to you too. I'm digging it.
Okay, these are from Sean, and I think those are zombicide pieces, if I remember correctly. Not entirely sure. Yeah, I think you've got the sailor, policeman, and zombie Santa Claus.
I'm digging it. I'm digging it. Zombie Santa, you gotta get that Dawn of the Dead vibe.
Yeah. Okay. Now some buildings from Lil C. All right.
Oh, quite nice. I do love outdoor terrain. I feel like it's underrepresented on the tabletop. Having a good village or town layout, I think is just as important as creepy dungeons with
Oh
working
yeah, for sure.
traps.
I mean, people tend to be in villages more than they tend to be in dungeons, so there's that.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I like where he's going with this roof here.
yeah. That's a good thatch. I like that.
Still not entirely sure how he made it, so not sure if he's in the chat right now, but I would be interested in knowing how to do that. Oh, nice shape.
Oh, it's like a Quonset design. I like that. Very nice.
Oh yeah. Okay, now these are from Earthman Brick. I don't think this video is out yet, but basically, I
Oh,
think
skin.
they're
Okay.
I think they're made of milliput or air drying clay. I'm not entirely sure which. He's got some nice textures going on in there.
Years ago, when I first got into Dwarven Forge, and they actually had a forum on their website, they had they had a sharing gallery. You could put up pictures of your Dwarven
Hmm.
Forge layouts, and there was a lady who hand stitched tiny rugs,
What?
like tiny, like intricately decorated rugs that you lay down in your Dwarven Forge for castle scenes, or if you just wanted an expensive looking rug for your characters to find.
But those
And
were.
it,
I mean, it's 28 millimeter scale. I mean, those.
yeah, I know. It was amazing, and I had reached out to her, like I private messaged her on the forums. I would love to purchase one or two of these for my Dwarven Forge setups, but I never heard back from her. And then they changed their website and everything and got rid of their forums. So it was just so. If you're out there, a pretty tiny rug weaving lady, please contact me, Sylvia at Gmail. I'd still love to have one or two.
Man, I mean, the stuff that some people come up with is amazing. Ooh,
Yeah.
okay, let's see. This is from Steve's Paintbrush. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but it does look amazing.
Vulture on top of a monster that's kind of made out of sea stuff. I like it.
Sea stuff and holding some guy in its hand, if I see correctly.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's okay. It's like a sea giant has dude.
Oh,
Okay. Oh, that's good stuff.
shit, this is amazing.
Huh. Campaign says, I bet the rug lady needs a pair of glasses for sure. Yeah, these are a lifesaver. Well, one of my um someone like gave me these reading glasses at Gary Con. I was sitting with my OD&D rule book like that, and he's like, "Here, you can borrow these." And I was like, "These are amazing." And my wife said, "I've been telling you for years you need reading." Well, you can just keep those. I get those at the Love's truck stop. They're like $20 a pair. You just keep them. So
Okay.
that was Squirrel Hermit, by the way. Thank you, Squirrel. I still appreciate these. Nice. I
Okay.
like those. Those will work for either dungeon terrain or for above ground ruins.
Yeah, these are from Dirty Basement Terrain, and I'm not entirely sure if he made a video about these yet or if that's still coming out, but yeah, I think they're good for both, and I think that's what he's doing here.
Yeah, yeah. The dual and anything you can, in my opinion, any terrain that can serve multiple purposes, just basically, it multiplies the value of it. So
Hmm.
like my Blue Mountain Menagerie, one purpose.
Exactly, yeah.
It's on a shelf until I play White Plume Mountain. Oh, that's nice.
Well, this is a massive set. Looks awesome.
Yeah, and that's I see him over in the chat. Dirty Basement, is that what did you make that from, my friend? That is quite nice.
Oh, check out the moss and stuff.
Yeah, that is great. I love a good flock. Flock, FLOCK, YouTube. But good flocking on a piece of terrain or on the base of a miniature can make the difference between that's a miniature and that's a tiny person walking in a tiny forest. I thought this was the coolest thing, but they sell for terrain manufacture a
Hmm.
hole punch.
Yeah,
But
the ones that make tiny leaves, yeah?
yeah, yeah, you
Yeah,
just take a
those are
leaf,
great.
just punch it out. And they're made for Dirty Basement says they're made from XPS.
Yeah,
That it looks like real fieldstone, my dude. It looks amazing.
I really love the way they're painted up too. That's really good. Okay, another one from Earthman Brick. Okay, now this is a
Some
great piece of repurposing. It's actually a playset they made for this Jungbots toy kind of thing.
okay.
And
Yeah, that, uh,
and
well done.
what he's done is added a bunch of parts and wires and stuff, and then grunged it up. So yeah, I mean the original toy is a lot brighter and more colorful, but this one looks proper creepy.
It reminds me of some of if you go back to White Dwarf magazine before it just became the catalog of buy these paints, buy these minis. Uh, in the late 80s, they would do these massive
Yeah,
space
yeah,
hulk
yeah,
sideways like it was actually meant to be played, but it was a sideways diorama, and
yeah.
that's what this brings back, and I love it.
Kind of like a vertical board, yeah. It's like you've got the
Yeah,
walkways and ladders, but instead of being flat on a table, it's flat on a wall or whatever, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh man, those were something.
Always fun to look at.
Okay, Dungeon Matron working on her windows. Oh, this looks good. So she's making leaded glass with some mesh. I'm not entirely sure what the material in between is. Might be PVA. I'm not entirely sure. So Lisa, did you get the PVA to work?
That's nice. That is lovely.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, I think she did.
nice.
That is gorgeous. That is gorgeous.
Good work. These are going to look real good when they're in the piece.
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay, more from Recon. That's Sean again. Let's see.
A little shotgun shack.
Yeah, I
That is
think th-
exactly what it is. That's a shotgun shack.
I think it might be a TT Combat kid that's been dressed up.
I'm digging it.
Yeah,
I'm getting Left 4 Dead swamp vibes from that. Those of you who know Left 4 Dead 2, there's a map that takes place almost exclusively in a swampy area. You'll know what I'm talking about.
I really like this mini with the moonshine and the shotgun.
Yes.
Nice work, man. Oh, okay. This is another dressed up TT Combat kit.
Yep. There's our gang of zombies again.
Yep. Texture going on there. Nice. And zombie workman. Helpful graffiti.
Oh yeah, you
Oh
get
yeah, and
get
he's got
graffiti on there.
he's got a little poster on there as well.
Oh, I love the movie poster. That is great. That's great. I dig it.
Yeah, yeah. You can even, geez, that's it. You can even read it's a screaming skull or something.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
There
Your
he is.
Santa zombie and a nice cloak.
Policeman. That's good stuff.
Zombie punk. I have one back here that I need to paint up. It actually came in a haul of minis that a friend of mine runs the game store. They got as a trade-in lot,
Hmm.
and it's an old Grenadier Fantasy Lords, and it's not going to show up. But
One
it's
sec.
it's the it is a skeleton delivering a pizza. He's got a tray with a giant pizza on it, and he's got the white well, it's not painted, but it's
The
it's
chef's
the
hat kind of thing.
yeah, like the narrow elongate chef's hat. um I love the piece. It's not like I said, though, I could not get it on camera properly, or else I would show you guys. And
You
I
know,
it up like so many others.
necromancers need to eat too. I mean, skeleton carrying pizza makes perfect sense. So let's see. Okay, so Lisa left, saying, okay. We'll have to ask her later. And Jorge is saying, zombie village people. Yeah, that was my first guess as well. So, back to this. I have no idea what it is or what it's meant to be.
Looks like an eyeball. I saw the description of it there. It was about it's constructed from dollar store lights and something else.
Yeah, floral foam, mirror, and round mirrored sunglasses.
I dig it.
Yeah, it looks. Ah, okay. I think I get it. I think this might be a part of the infinity mirror that she was planning to do. The what do you call it? The infinity portal? The
Yeah, the infinity mirror.
yeah. All right, this should be interesting. Okay, quest board terrain coming up. Tiny eyeball monster.
There you go.
So I saw the making of this. So this eyeball thing and this dragon are the same miniature. Yeah,
Nice.
it's literally cut up and she did stuff to it to get the shape and glued on the eyeball. That's looking really terrifying. I like it. Can just imagine it wriggling and making strange noises.
I'd rather not. I would really rather not imagine that at all. Actually, there's a lot I'd like to imagine. That's not one of them.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
Lovely work
no,
though.
no. I'm getting like a space 1999 vibe from it, which is a good. Oh, there we
Okay,
go. That we're talking about. That is the piece, man.
yeah,
That is absolutely gorgeous. I love that piece of Blanche art. You know, it's like at a distance you might think, oh, it's just more cheesecake fantasy art, but the closer you get in, the more you realize she just means business.
yeah,
You
and
know,
the thing with all his paintings and they've got a lot of texture on them. I mean, you'll have to zoom in close to see it, but it's really the textures on them are something amazing.
yeah.
This one is back from the early 90s or late 80s, I would say.
Yeah, that's from Rogue Trader, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Again, like I said, it's the guy really defined the aesthetics of the whole setting.
Hmm. Yeah, it truly does. I'm not familiar with that piece, but it's still gorgeous. Inquisition, yeah, I can definitely see the Inquisition taking that stance.
Thanks for throwing this in, Steve. Okay, let's see. Started next scratch builder sculpt at Tyranid Dragon. Okay.
Oh wow, all that handmade. That is lovely.
Yeah, and he's casting the parts he made, and that makes it much easier to build bunches of. Oh, I like that base.
That's an awesome base.
It's he also scratch build it and cast it. I mean, he makes them in bulk. They're awesome. All right, I see where he's going there.
Nice. It's like so you use the wire armature and then hot glue to build up
Yeah.
the sort of snaky part there. I love it. I love it.
All right, and then he's building scales out of card. Nice.
Very nice. See, I think of myself as a DIY guy because I'll fire up the printer and bang out a few minis here and again, and and you guys out here making stuff out of like well, I used some coat hanger wire and some hot glue, and then I entered this in the Golden Demon competition and won. Oh, okay.
I don't think they would accept it because it's not original Games Workshop parts, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, probably not.
But yeah,
Critical Rush, then screw you, GW.
we did have a few challenges on the channel way back. For example, we once had to build something out of pistachio shells.
Uh-huh.
Another time we had to build something out of tea bags. I think those went pretty well. Oh, another window from Dungeon Matron. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is working really well. Okay, and yep, I think that's the end of the community showcase. So thanks everyone. Those were some really good pieces.
Well, those are lovely. Those are lovely. Everybody, great job. Great job on those. And it's the one thing that I tell people though, like if I go to events and I bring a metric ton of Dwarven Forge and miniatures and everything with me, those is I like to emphasize, um, you don't have to, like what you're saying earlier, if you can cut PVA and glue things together, you have dungeon terrain.
Yeah.
And you have dungeon terrain, you probably won't mind if somebody accidentally spills soda on, as opposed to me, where I go into a stage 4 thrombo, if I cheat dust lying inside my Dwarven Forge pieces. But all you really need are a couple of friends willing to pretend to be hobbits for an afternoon, some dice, some rule books, some pencil, and some paper. And if you decide to bring the crafting stuff to it, again, this looks just fine. This is painted just as good as a pre-painted mini from Wizards of the Coast, and it will look fine. And the hard lesson that I had to learn when I was taking, weeks to
Mhm.
paint 2 or 3 orcs is nobody at the table cares what orc 7 looks like.
Fair
You'll
point. Yeah.
literally be on the table for 3 dice rolls, and then you'll pick him up and set him aside. Nobody's going to pick him back up and go, the shading on the eyes is different. He did a bad. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, thinking about it, painting is its own hobby. Crafting terrain is its own hobby. If you enjoy doing them and doing them well, then that's one thing. Knock yourself out. But if you just want to play a tabletop game, whether it's a war game or a role-playing game, you don't need to move mountains and stuff.
Yeah. Don't let it. Yeah. Enjoy painting. Enjoy terraining. Don't let it eat your RPG hobby. If you have a game to run on Friday at 9 o'clock, don't be painting miniatures at 8:45. if you're not ready for your game, you know. Just my advice. Maybe you have a supercomputer brain and you can do both at the same time. Type with one hand and paint with the other. But they're great hobbies that can support each other. But if you feel like you're not going to be able to devote all the time to game prep that you need, set the minis aside. Your players will understand.
Ah, that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. Did you always use terrain or miniatures in your games, or is that something you came to later? Because when I started originally, the first people I used to play with were war gamers first and foremost. So the idea of having terrain and stuff in there was always there from the beginning for me. But I've also met some other people who were mostly theater of the mind, and then they only got to use miniatures and terrain much later.
I right out of the chute, when I was a kid, I fibbed a little. I got Keep on the Borderlands dice and a set of Grenadier miniatures that came with a brush and a little paints and some it was like fantasy legends. It came with like
Hmm.
a Hercules and a unicorn and a Pegasus and
Oh, nice.
like a giant or something. But you take it home and you'd paint minis yourself, and of course I did so very badly. Um, But right off the bat, I wanted miniatures and terrain. It just looked cool. It's, I've never been a scale freak. Like, no, your mini is a half an inch back. That just puts you out of bow range. I'm sorry. You should have placed him better, But at the same time, like, it can help visualization, and it just looks cool. It's toys. It's fun toys to play with. So I've always wanted to do minis at some level. Like, guys, even if it's a battle mat, a wet erase marker, and and cardboard stand-ups from the Marvel superheroes, let's have this stuff laid out here, and it just went from there. And in 1999, when I was telling my wife I'd seen this cool stuff called Dwarven Forge, but there's also a couple of companies that make paper terrain, paper craft stuff, and then there's this other stuff called I can't remember now, but it's dungeon molds. You pour it out.
All right.
I wasn't thinking economically. I was get some foam board, get an X-Acto knife, and get some brown paint, and you can have all the dungeon you want. But when I talked to my wife about it, I was like, if I get these molds and I get a couple of bags of resin, I know me. I'll wind up with like 2 or 3 pieces of dungeon terrain and a bag of mostly unused resin and a bunch of mostly unused molds. I just know my own nature too well. And she agreed. Well, under the Christmas tree the next year were my first 2 Dwarven Forge sets. God bless her. So, you can either have someone do it for you, Dwarven Forge, or you can do it yourself. Everything else. But again, I like it because it looks cool.
Yep.
I just like it because it looks cool. Her starts, thank you. I always forget that. Her starts is what it was. Thank you, Campaign Terrain. And I've always thought it just pops. It just looks good. I mean, when I went to a local historical miniatures gaming society convention that I got invited to by a friend to run D&D, the section of tables where they let people run RPG games were some weird unexplored land to the old guys who played historical miniatures and would bring, their 15 millimeter American Civil War and all their houses and their little carefully sculpted foam hills and their green mat and so on. And so when I roll in and I show up with Dwarven Forge and start putting out miniatures and things that look like buildings and hallways and tunnels, they came over and they're like, oh, this looks really good. And, they got that on a visceral level, and people saw it, other people that hadn't played D&D in decades, guys at that time when I was in my mid 30s and they were in their late 50s and early 60s, came over and wanted to know, like, what game is it? Oh, it's Dungeons and Dragons. And I'd show them, the AD&D books. And I played that in high school, or I played that in college, and I'd get more and more and more and more and more signups to the point where the last game that I ran at an HMGS, I ran Tomb of Horrors, and I must have had it wasn't the largest one, but I had like 14 people sign up for the Tomb of Horrors just to see Tomb of Horrors laid out in Dwarven Forge. And have their characters die in horrible and amusing fashion. But it's a good draw. It's just a good draw. But if my friends who run the comic shop said, hey, please come for free RPG day, we can't really afford you a table big enough to do Dwarven Forge on, though, I'd be like, no problem. And I'd bring dice, rule books, character sheets, and pencil and paper. And that's how I go. I can go from nothing on the table to, I have so much stuff on this table that literally like building stuff on top of cardboard, then moving it so people can see the next level of dungeon down with black cloths covering things so they can't see what's in the rooms until they get there, and anything in between. I'm easy.
That's awesome. I got to admit that seeing miniatures is something that my inner 3-year-old is like, wanna play, wanna play.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned the inner 3-year-olds. Is a lot of times, like particularly if I'm at a retail location running, D&D game is the kids. The kids move right in, and Dwarven Forge nowadays is made from ABS. It's extremely tough. You throw it on the floor, it might slightly mar the paint. Until they started doing the ABS, it was all made with dental blaster.
Oh man.
Or dental resin. You throw that on the floor. Now, I had dropped a couple of chunky pieces in the past, and it dented the linoleum in my kitchen.
Whoa, all right.
But then I've dropped pieces like from my hand height to the table on accident, and it's broken them, and I've had to glue them back together, with super glue. So yeah, the little kiddies rushing over to pick up a handful of the cool castle-looking stuff, I got to watch out for, and try and stop them before they do it, because parents will go turbo rabbit on you if you stop their little angel from destroying a irreplaceable piece of resin Dwarven Forge terrain. They're all talking to you. Oh, I used to play D&D in college, and then you're like, oh, please don't do that, and they're like, don't talk to my child. Not that that's ever happened to me.
No, but I've heard of such things. I've read about it somewhere. Okay, Bill. Do you have any plans for the apart from Gwek? Do you have any plans or things coming up from your side?
Uh, guests, guests on the show. I'm gonna have to look at when Free RPG Day is and see if my buddies down at the local comic and game store want me to come out and do anything. Of course, we live stream first edition AD&D. We have just started a campaign of B2, Keep on the Borderlands. That is every Tuesday night at 8:00 Eastern. We start. Well, 9:00 we start playing. 8:00 I just run my mouth for an hour before. Friday nights we play classic Gamma World, first edition Gamma World. And in the in between, I'll just find cool stuff about classic RPGs to talk about. As far as plans, to quote the man, plan ain't no plan. I just kind of roll with it. I just kind of do what I think the audience will like, and it's worked out okay. I may not get rich, I may not get YouTube famous or anything like that, but hey, all I got to do is wait around for Wizards to screw something up and drop a couple of spicy videos, and boom, I'm back in the algorithm, baby.
Yeah, good. Talking to you was fantastic. You're absolutely hilarious.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Campaign terrain says Free RPG Day is 24 June. Thanks, Cross.
Yeah, that's right in the middle of the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention. So
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have games to run and stuff like that. I don't, I don't know. I'll have to see that. That'll be a tight squeeze if I can do that, because I'll have folks playing on Discord, and if I say, yeah, no, I'm not going to go to that while the guac is going on. I'm not going to try and do something like that while the guac is going on. It just looks really bad, because people are like, oh, you're not even attending your own con. Well, screw you. But I'll reach out to the guys at Gods and Monsters, my friends over there, and see what they're up for. So.
Okay. Oh, well, we've been going for almost 3 hours.
Yeah, this is starting to squash my delicate little head. So.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Bill, once again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Carl, thank you so much for having me on the show. This was an absolute gas. You have a great audience, and it's fun to not have to drive. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah, I
fun
hear
to
you. I hear you.
drive for it all.
Okay, so we'll be back with another stream next Sunday with Steve from Shadows of Arconia. In the meantime, again, thanks everyone for watching, and thank you, Bill, and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Peace.
Bye.